Distributist, it has an excellent YouTube channel that covers political philosophy, cultural commentary from, is it fair to say, a neo-reactionary perspective?
Well, that's kind of odd. Originally, I was trying to do a more Catholic social justice perspective, but the questions people kept on bringing to me largely focused on politics, and so I found myself drawing more and more on NRX stuff like Spandrel and Mencius Moldbug and people like Nick Land to answer those questions. I think that NRX has a lot of flaws to it, and what's sort of strange is that my most popular videos have been about NRX, but I'm not unaware of the flaws of neo-reaction, not least of which because I think it's fundamentally blind to spirituality. Most people these days kind of come out to me because they think NRX is a quietist philosophy that just cedes power to the enemies of those it represents. But you know, I'm not unaware of the flaws of NRX. I certainly wouldn't have called myself an NRX thinker, but I guess because I always discuss it, that's kind of what I'm known for these days.
Yeah, it's it does seem like, you know, once when someone speaks openly about either Moldbug or Nick Land or you know, kind of addresses this space head on, it does seem that people tend to lump you in with NRX. I mean, I've been described as an NRX adjacent person, but it's just, I mean, I've been interested in these ideas and I've spoken about them a few times. I mostly speak about dating and stuff, but apparently I am NRX adjacent now because I'm Moldbug curious. But that's what you get, you know, by putting your finger in the cookie jar.
Dating, have you gone on LP, like a Skywalker's stream? They do this like dissident dating kind of channel that it seems like they have everyone on their show at some stage.
Yeah, I have. I've gone on there.
You have?
Yeah. It's it was really fun. And yeah, what did we talk about? Dating.
Yeah, I've never made a single. People ask me in life all the time about dating tips, but I typically don't have very much to say.
Well, it's, you know, once you give someone a bit of information about something that is useful to their lives, you know, they come back for more. I think there's some, you know, idea that a fountain of wisdom, you know, it never runs dry, and you know, whoever figured out political philosophy must know something about everything else as well. So, but you do know a lot about political philosophy, and you've also debated a lot of what should I call them? You know, internet luminaries, the Contrapoints.
Oh my God,
Vosh, Sargon.
Well, Sargon and I are pretty good friends. I consider us to be friends. Vosh, I think I stormed off. I didn't storm off, but I basically quit that debate because I saw it as an ambush and as completely bad faith, and I have never had a reason to reconsider that conclusion. And yeah, I mean that's kind of the long and the short of it. Contrapoints, I'm kind of amazed I even got a quote unquote debate with them. It was more of a discussion. I think the reason why I got that discussion was that Contrapoints, their background was New Atheism, and New Atheists were just convinced that Christians and Catholics were utter idiots. So while Contrapoints would have been very guarded against someone like Sargon of Akkad, I'm sure they thought that, oh, we'll get the stupid Christian on and I'll just be able to repeat Dan Savage talking points about the sexual revolution and I'll just fold. And I could tell by the end of the conversation it hadn't gone the way that Contrapoints had thought it would go. So, yeah, I mean, this is sort of an interesting thing. Initially, when I started this channel, the point of YouTube was conversation. The point of YouTube was to have a dialectic with the left, have a dialectic with I forget what they called themselves back in 2016, not the liberalists yet, the anti-SJW crowd, perhaps, cultural libertarians. The point was to have a conversation. But these days, I don't think that's the case. I think that there's sort of a demand for two things. There's sort of this demand for streaming, the sort of parasocial performance art. And then there's a need for answers. And the need for answers is particular on the right because the left and the progressive left seem like they have pre-made answers for everything. And I'm much more interested in the latter of those two demands than I am the former, although I indulge the former occasionally.
Yeah, that's definitely what your channel's structured as. Definitely a kind of question and answer format. But I think your sound is still a bit off because it goes really silent and then it pops into like very loud. I'm not sure how that gets onto the recording, but I can imagine it's probably the same.
All right, we'll try this mode on the microphone if this is a little bit better.
Yeah, I think let's just try it because I don't know, it just goes in and out, so that's why
we'll I'll try to orient this very steadily here. Okay.
Worst case, we'll fix it in post. I mean, I can hear you. It's just the loudness goes up and down. I guess that's an Audacity thing that may be fixable. Cool. So where were we? Yeah, the debates. I'm curious, what do you think the current atmosphere is like in the dissident circles on YouTube? I know you haven't been as active as you used to be. You used to be ultra prolific. Now you're just like plain prolific because you still post more than most people. Kind of what's your feeling about what is the current face of the dissident right online? Because there's been a lot of changes.
Yeah, I think that we're bottoming out on a lot of debates, and this is sort of I've kind of switched from being, and I haven't made a switch completely yet, but this is going to happen, is I'm going to be less of a YouTuber, I think, and more of someone who writes Substack posts and then reads them on YouTube. And probably no one will notice the difference too much because I write the way that I speak, at least on this topic. But the reason why is that I want to have the post in writing because I feel like the real thing that needs to happen right now is people just need to kind of bottom out on a lot of these conversations. People need to just have the controversy laid bare. Okay, these are the two sides, and we don't need to spend additional time and effort endlessly rehashing this again and again and again. And there are so many illusions, I think, that the right was under since 2016. They were factually right about an enormous number of things: the futility of Republican politics and conservative politics generally, the basic mendacity of mainstream institutions, and the untrustworthiness of trying to interact with them in some kind of dialectic. But there's this bizarre impression post 2016, and this is obviously due to Trump, that you could kind of win by developing social media clout. It sounds ridiculous when I talk about this in hindsight, but people believe that. And now we're kind of coming to the end of that. And people are wondering, okay, so what's the next step? What's the way forward? How can you even interact in a meaningful way with mainstream that's so unafraid of using power against you? It doesn't seem like the mainstream is sustainable at all. That's sort of the silver lining, is that this thing, Joe Biden, he feels, and not just Joe Biden, but the entire mainstream that he represents, it feels like a declining and diseased power structure. It's sort of almost, I wouldn't say it's tyrannical, but it's sort of desperate in its declining period. I wouldn't necessarily call it Brezhnevian, but you get that sort of sense from it. And so it's apparent, it does seem apparent to me, or a lot of people, that, this is not something we might have to deal with forever, but there's no understanding of what will come next. And there's not a good understanding of what people who consider themselves dissidents should do next. Certainly not any kind of popular activism. That path seems completely closed. But if not that, then what?
Yeah, that's definitely on the list of questions I have for you. So I love that you posed it first. I mean, you're more of a veteran of these spaces than I am. I just kind of like barged into whatever the dissident right is at the moment, and it's really interesting and it's exciting and it's changing by the day. I don't have a sense of perspective. I don't necessarily know what happened before last September. So now I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm like every day I kind of discover another like, oh, you should have read this forum thread 5 years ago. Here it is, and I'm like, whoa, this is heavy stuff, guys. So it is really interesting, but to me it feels like, I don't know. It's an echo chamber probably, but it feels like things are kind of accelerating, and not necessarily in like an accelerationist direction, but the fraying and the fragility of the so-called cathedral seems to be more and more obvious. I don't know if that's should make me hopeful, because it seems like they're overplaying their hand. Or if it's just, this is when the behemoth wakes up and, swats with increased vigor. And that's it. It's very hard to interpret that. I mean, with your timeline, being here, having been here for a longer time, like what's your take on the temperature at the moment?
Well, right now people are really exhausted and they're really tired of politics. And so I don't know. Again, this isn't really a prediction. This is more or less just an instinct. But I get the sense that no one's really going to start anything this summer or this year. But I think the general problem is that we just don't have a dialectic of any kind that people believe in. No one thinks that the Republican Party or conservatives are any kind of serious political force. They're a joke. And it creates a problem for the left, too, because that's sort of what sells this radicalism, right? It basically allows the progressives, the Democrats, who are establishmentarians, I hope that's the right word, that are establishment men and women at their core, it allows them to essentially recruit radicals and anarchists as their base, because there's this evil boogeyman called the Republican that's constantly threatening to gain power and, I don't know, take away their gay pride parades or something. And that's not really something that any serious person believes in anymore. I'm sorry. And I know it can be cynically exploited, but no one seriously believes it. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have the anarchists and the communists start asking hard questions about, well, what can we expect going forward, actually implementing communism? And the response from their leaders is, we don't have any plan to implement communism, give us money. And on the Democratic side, it's going to be an attempt to consolidate this woke ideology into the educational institutions. But when they do that, I don't know. First of all, I think it weakens the coherency of our entire national narrative. But at the same time, it also makes them seem like, well, I'll repeat this, it makes them seem like Brezhnevian bureaucrats. It makes them seem like they're repeating some kind of revolutionary ideology from 30 years ago, and they're trying to institutionalize it. They're trying to institutionalize a revolutionary ideology that was, when it was at all fresh, necessarily something that could at least pretend to be a distant ideology. And so I just see that both of these sides are going to kind of creak in their foundation. And I think a lot of people are going to begin questioning this. I'm not so sure how the right's going to react to this. I think the suggested realignment, always prophesized, but still with a lot of problems, is that sort of the old school labor Marxists are going to split off from the left and are going to head towards not necessarily the right wing, but something that we could call the post-left, which will include what are now considered right-wingers. And this will become the new dissident sphere. And then neoliberals will be a consolidated mass behind the Democratic Party, sort of the progressives / Joe Biden types. Yeah, I don't know. The difficulty obviously is that I think very few leftists, labor types, are aware enough to understand the situation that they're in. They're too caught up. You'll hear, I mean, I know this is true in Britain. You can see equivalents in America. I don't know why I'm thinking of the British example, but you'll see old labor types still complain about Margaret Thatcher, like Margaret Thatcher's actions against coal strikers in like 1982. That's like going on almost 40 years right now. I mean, and this is where people, but this is sort of where the left is in charge, and therefore the people that leave its coalition basically are the people that it no longer needs because they're too weak or they're too disconnected to actually get anything done on the left. So I don't know. I think that's where the popular movement's going. For myself, for the intellectuals, I think that's kind of what we need to do is we just need to kind of shake things up. I think so much stuff is wrong with how we see and act in the present world that I think we just need to sort of take a radical reset and really let our imaginations run wild for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I mean, maybe I'm patting myself on the back too much to be part of this group, but there's just quite of a post-liberal, post-left moment kind of amalgamating in some groups now. And like you said, it's partly kind of straight up Marxists, even like Trotskyites who have spun off from the mainstream left, and it's also partly people who, like me, I used to be pretty much, libertarian, conservative, then I was a bit, thinking about liberalism for a very long time until my eyes glazed over and I was like, yeah, okay, all the scenarios playing out from this core ideology are not going to work out, the way their proponents expect them to. But there is something forming, and there's different strains of thought. There's kind of, even like in the Claremont Institute, there's NRX, there's post-liberalism on the left as well. Even like radical feminism has some kind of post-liberal strains now. It's just really an interesting place to be, and it's not all played out on YouTube, partly on Twitter as well. You're not on Twitter anymore, which is sad, but probably a good idea.
Oh my God, I have to recommend. I'm not saying I told my wife I might ask her to make an account that just set up to automatically retweet what I put on Telegram. But I'm so glad I left Twitter. That is just a hell site. There's just nothing good about it. It's really destroying our attention spans. When you leave Twitter, you noticeably become more present in the real world. It sounds ridiculous, but it's absolutely true. More and more I've come to believe that politics is the root, or I should say popular politics is the root of all evil and the destruction of the creative will. And that popular politics is the most essential piece of democracy. And that has its most essential expression on Twitter. So I just think that Twitter is this chaotic pit. It's exactly what the Greeks talked about when they talked about. I don't exactly remember the words or they would use to describe it, but they talk about democracy sort of degenerating all aristocratic elements of a society slowly but surely. And I think Twitter is basically that process accelerated and observable. I wouldn't imagine that future scholars, behavioral scientists, might be able to do some interesting analysis on just how people behaved on Twitter across 10 years.
Yeah, it is a really fascinating space. I mean, I'm kind of late to the party, so I'm still to me it's still kind of fresh and new, but you're absolutely right. It's I keep bringing up this example, like I used to be a smoker, but Twitter doesn't compare to addiction to cigarettes or anything like that. I don't wake up at 4 a.m. with a good tweet or wanting to smoke, but I do sometimes. I have like a tweet in my head, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be able to sleep if I don't tweet this. So yeah, it is I don't know, it's a beast, but to be honest, like, I mean, in my case, Twitter's where this podcast started. Twitter's where I meet most people that come on. It's still very much a valuable place in terms of disseminating stuff and promo and all that type of stuff. But it's a soul thief. It diminishes your personhood in very profound ways, like you described. So I'm curious, in at one point in your background, I don't know how long time ago, you had a break with the water we swim in with liberalism. Curious what that was. People call it the red pill moment. Whatever. You saw the light or you saw the darkness, depending on what your what your perspective is. So what happened?
Well, this is kind of odd because I don't think it's the same path that most people took. People make fun of me for this, but if you go back and watch the first or the second video, pardon me, if you go back and watch the first or second video on my channel, you'll hear the lines, well, I'm committed to liberalism, because I'm talking to, I think a then alt-writer in an interview. And this was true and false. At that time, I haven't really changed my opinion since that time, to be quite honest. I've changed my emphasis, but not any of my core opinions. At that time, I was very much focused on sort of the Catholic moment that I thought was emerging. And I had sort of broken. I had a new atheist phase like everyone else. And due to a variety of observations about the nature of reality, about the nature of philosophy, about even the nature of politics to a certain extent, I slowly abandoned the new atheism, rationalist perspective, and moved towards more of a classic Aristotelian, and then eventually a Catholic conversion, which is more or less where I am now in terms of core beliefs. The only thing that's changed, and this is a change in emphasis, is I think in 2016 when I started this channel, I understood that liberalism and secularism were flawed. But I had this weird, and this is very prominent in Catholic circles in America, this weird kind of fusionist perspective, like, oh yeah, we can have a little bit of liberalism and then like our core Catholic beliefs. And this is politically going to work because everyone will see how crazy this stuff is eventually. And they'll eventually reach for something that's more healthy, which is us. And then, we'll restore sanity. After what I've seen in 2018, especially with some of the problems in the Catholic Church's political structure itself, I became much more cynical about this working out so neatly. I still 100% believe that the Christian Church, the Catholic Church, in its ultimate sense, is going to prevail and provide something more healthy. But it's not going to be through this sort of first things, National Review style. Oh, we're part of this conversation. And we have all these rational arguments. A great example of a person like this would be Ryan T. Anderson. Do you know the guy? Or you've heard of him, right?
No, I don't think I have.
So Ryan T. Anderson comes from this. So this is something that's not a thing in Europe, but it's very much a thing in America. So in America, probably all Europeans know about the evangelicals because they're a boogeyman in the mainstream media, right?
Of course.
And the evangelicals kind of have their own colleges, right? They're a little bit more separatist and they're a little bit more red state. But Catholics, because of the fact that their primary immigration waves came earlier, they were sort of doing separatism a little bit before it was cool. And so, especially on the East Coast, but also on the West Coast, there are tons of universities, elite universities, that just have like these cadres of highly intellectual Catholics that kind of circulate amongst themselves and like have their own conferences and write their own publications and all this stuff. And since the 1950s, at least, the direction has been 100% Catholic and 100% American. And a great example of this would be, well, Ryan T. Anderson is the only one who's coming to my mind right now, but he was the primary like intellectual go-to for opposition to gay marriage. And now he's the primary intellectual go-to for opposition to transgenderism in children, particularly. So the idea was, we'll win in the marketplace of ideas. Well, just 6 months ago, Amazon just hard banned his book on transgenderism called When Harry Became Sally. Maybe you saw this briefly in the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, and obviously my kind of I don't know whether I want to call this a red pill moment or not, because I can't emphasize enough how much this was not a core belief change, but an emphasis change. But this sort of mirrors my own disillusionment with liberalism, understanding that there isn't really a dialectic. Like Ryan T. Anderson isn't hooked into the system in any way that he could win, right? It's like he's playing some kind of video game competition, but his controller isn't plugged into the actual system. He's just banging the buttons, and then the system is going to generate some predetermined conclusion. whether his arguments are good or whether his arguments are bad. There's this great Piers Morgan. He had a debate with Ryan T. Anderson about gay marriage, and Piers Morgan wouldn't even allow Ryan T. Anderson to come to the table. He sat him in the audience and forced him to sit up and debate from the audience, which is a great symbol of the because the position against gay marriage was so, the communication was, it's not even part of the conversation. It's just something coming in from the peanut gallery, from the rabble that we have on the sides. So I don't know. This is sort of the revelation that undergirds most red pill journeys, is that political discourse does not work the way that we've been taught political discourse works. It's largely a game of elites. And even if you're in the elites, you're like Ryan T. Anderson and a bunch of these other Catholics that Leia Libresco is probably a more minor one that I'm a fan of. They go through Yale, they go through Harvard, they publish a lot of papers that no one ever reads. They usually have degrees in economics or law or mathematics or some combination of those things. And then no one listens to them. They get shoved in an intellectual ghetto, and no matter how good their arguments are, they're never part of the conversation in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of my feeling I get with kind of Catholic integralism and the people behind that movement as well. It's interesting to debate in very in weird corners of the internet, but if you look at how many views discussions about interviews of Adrian Vermeule or something are getting, it's a very fringe argument, but they are still kind of allowed to happen in the halls of power. I mean, you could be at Yale, you could be at Harvard, but you're in the broom closet, and it's a weird
these people are one step back from that, right? These people were this school of thought. They are 100% orthodox, but this was the school from the 1950s that said, we're not doing integralism, we're doing integration with this liberal system. And I think that is failing, and that's why Catholics are moving on to things like integralism or just separatism, because this project has fundamentally failed in any meaningful way. So I think that's a distinction. And I think when integralists talk, they're probably directing their dialectic more towards people like Ryan T. Anderson.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why anyone. Yeah. I don't know why anyone would follow Ryan T. Anderson's philosophy now. I mean, I do appreciate his arguments and the fact that he's writing these books, but he's writing books to an audience that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that does make that does ring true, especially with this concept of the marketplace of ideas. And another faction that's been really popular in the last few years, is kind of fizzling out at the moment, is the IDW, which is essentially the poster children of the marketplace of ideas. What's your temperature check on the IDW? Where has it been? Where is it going? Is it worthwhile?
Well, the thing is that the people on the IDW, I am varying temperatures on them. I've always been very negative on the Weinsteins. I don't see that. I don't know. I think I might have an emotional bias against them, because I see them as sort of like Trotskyists a little bit. Like, how Trotsky, he basically runs the Red Army, and he runs the Red Army during Lenin and kills all these peasants. And then, he gets exiled. He gets exiled when Stalin takes power. And then about 10 years later, he's writing articles that get published in American newspapers saying, oh, well, the reason we failed is that Russian peasants were just stupid Slavs that don't know anything and are just horribly backwards people. We couldn't help that communism worked there. They're just horrible people. But Americans, you guys are smart. You guys could make communism work. It just this that kind of argument where the shepherd blames his flock is something that emotionally emotionally is really, really distasteful for me. It's kind of like that. I don't know if you've ever watched Disney movies, but it's kind of like the last moments of Scar, where from the Lion King, where he tries to blame the hyenas for everything. I just hate that. And every time I see the Weinsteins, I always get that impression that these people were riding the social justice bandwagon, the progressive bandwagon, with all of the sort of cringe new atheist takes that are predicated on the same ideas. And now it's turned on them and they got purged. And their solution is not to re-examine their assumptions behind the sort of new atheism, but simply to lament the fact that it took the next logical step in a process that was always going to happen. There was never any stable point in the liberal project where it would have stayed 1999 or even 2009 forever. And if you don't realize that, then I don't know. It feels like you're just complaining about your personal misfortunes and trying to, well, essentially blame the flock that you once led.
Yeah, I think the most jarring thing to me is how blind people in this situation are to their moral assumptions. When Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein or who, a lot of the IDW just talk about human rights or things like that, about these like moral universals that come from, I don't know, Gen X sensibilities, and lay them out as if they were some cosmic logic. It's quite shocking that they don't see that, this isn't cosmic logic. This is just, I don't know, 1990s neoliberalism that you've imbibed in, and now you're presenting it as this is, gospel truth, and it isn't. And the fact that, other people might not see it that way is might be shocking to them, but it's just not, it's not shocking to the people who do see it that way, especially, woke people who are really in the grips of a very powerful moral system. And, if you have a system that, ostensibly doesn't have any morals, or at least, says that, okay, we're so pluralistic that any moral system can work within our bounds. Well, it's prey to predation from a very powerful moral system, which is what we have now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is sort of a misunderstanding of history that I think the conservative movement is just as guilty of as are the moderates. There was sort of this whole retconning where we could convince ourselves that 90s neoliberalism and 90s liberalism was exactly what the founding fathers wanted and were expecting. This is something that I obviously get from Curtis Yarvin, who I know you've had on your show. But I'm sorry about the background noise. I know you've had Curtis Yarvin on your show, but one of his thought experiments, which is very telling, is you only know history if you can imagine what these characters would think if you brought them forward into the future. How would they react to your society? And I don't know if he said this on your show, Yarvin, but he made this observation, which I think is really telling. He says, if you brought our founding fathers into the 21st century or even into the 1990s, they would take one look at the American people and say, these people are completely morally degenerate. They probably wouldn't have used the word degenerate, but they would have used some variation on it. These people are completely morally debased, I think would be a more 18th century way of putting it. They're totally incapable of Republican virtues. They need a king. And if that's their reaction, then why are we quoting these people in defense of republicanism? If they themselves knew that these ideas of liberalism and republicanism were totally contingent on some kind of moral foundation, be it deist or Christian. Even John Locke thought that atheism should be completely illegal.
Yeah, I think they're brought out as figureheads. They're the first domino in the so-called founders version of liberalism, and they're used instrumentally to prop up whatever is going on right now. And it's becoming quite transparent to people who know what's going on. But yeah, most people do. I think most people do think that that's the founders' vision. OnlyFans. Definitely definitely part of the founder's vision. And anything that goes down the more freedom, the John Stuart Mill track, pretty much the founder's vision.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this is just our own government's ability to infinitely retcon itself. That was the philosophy through the 20th century, is that we would use creative interpretations of certain words in order to sort of conciliate the obvious 18th century meaning of the original Constitution with what the 20th century power structures actually wanted to do. I think that this process is coming to a close. So are you aware of the musical Hamilton?
Yes.
So yeah, this is a musical. It's really not my scene. I do like musicals occasionally, but I find musical nerds and the drama kids to be, or the people that used to be drama kids in high school to be totally insufferable. So I tend to steer away from these fads, but Hamilton is a fad that has been hard to ignore because it's this phenomenon where, and I'll explain to your listeners if they don't know what this is, if they're listening from Europe. Basically, it's a musical about the founding fathers. There already has been one called 1776, but this is a new one where it's all rap, and every single character, King George notwithstanding, is not white, which is funny because they all were white in reality, and it focuses on Hamilton. And Hamilton's sort of this weird figure because he's sort of George Washington's brain. George Washington was the great military leader, and Hamilton was the great economic visionary. And if you put them both together, you kind of get American Caesar. You get sort of the American Napoleon, a person who had a vision for what America was going to be. But in this rendition, Hamilton is just like this diversitocrat, right? He's like this neoliberal, ultra competent black guy, who just, who sees what America needs to become. He sees that America needs to become this cosmopolitan place, and he fights for it. And of course, but this sort of starts this sweet spot where conservatives can kind of be like, oh, wow, like people are interested in liberalism again. And obviously progressives can be like, oh, wow, it's so diverse. They don't even let white people audition for these roles. And there was this YouTuber, I forget, I think it was Quentin Reviews, who's like this sort of brain dead SJW YouTuber, and he makes this video and he's like, if Hamilton were here, he'd probably be really, really racist. So I think Hamilton celebrates this in a really inappropriate way. And of course, the anti-SJWs are just aghast. Oh my God, how could they be so intolerant, or how could they be so doctrinaire that they don't even like their own stuff? Quentin Reviews was 100% right on this. The idea that Hamilton represents some kind of diverse reading of the Constitution that's all stable is ridiculous. The idea that in Hamilton or inside any of these diverse renditions of the founding, there's going to be something that Americans can believe in that won't be immediately uprooted is ridiculous. 2 years after Hamilton, the New York Times is publishing the 1619 Project, which says, and despite the fact that the New York Times unpublished their own statements on this fact, but the 1619 Project did say that the founding of America was in 1619 with the introduction of slavery, not in 1776. If that's the case, then what the hell is Hamilton even standing for, except an illusion that can be torn down by the next iteration of progressivism? Of course, Hamilton would have been racist. By today's standards, by today's progressive standards, every institution he created was essentially a white supremacist institution. But people believe in this. And I feel like the joke, I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's so insulting. And I feel sorry for the people who believe in this stuff. I feel sorry for the people who are excited about the vision that Hamilton promises people, because it's a gigantic lie. It's just there to get them drawn out and excited. And then in 5 years, they'll tear it down and call everyone who liked it racist. The logic's already there.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, and it is interesting because I feel like it's fizzling out. I remember the Hamilton Mania, but
Yeah,
yeah, like you said, that was just a domino on the road, and it did have all these tendrils of sucking people in. It was definitely a kind of a lefty type of phenomenon. I mean, maybe it's just me. I'm not really into musicals, but it wasn't that attractive to me.
it was a
But
lefty phenomenon for sure.
yeah, but
But it had
yes,
it had fans among the conservatives and the Ryan T. Anderson types. They saw this as, oh my God, liberalism is finally bringing us into synthesis with the mainstream, and someday our ideals will win out. It's just a complete illusion.
yeah. For people who are kind of like us on the dissident right, what do you feel is a good strategy to simply exist at the moment? To what, because I mean things are the system is destabilizing. It's very hard to predict
Mm.
exactly which way it's going to turn. But as I said, being a veteran of these spaces, like what would you counsel to the noobs? What should one do at the moment?
I think you need to find things that you love, and try to, as much as possible, divorce yourself from the contest to be popular. This is sort of a romantic notion, but I think that really people need to find things that they'll love and that they'll stand by, even if they're on the losing side. I mean, that's kind of the definition of love anyway, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That a thing you love is a thing that you'll stand by, even if it loses or becomes unpopular. And that is where the foundation needs to be made. I think that having a family or starting a family kind of refocuses you on this a little bit. I think, I don't know where you are in your journey, but I think you might be able to vouch for this now or soon, or it really does sort of focus you. It sort of grounds you in the way that Twitter kind of ungrounds you and unmoors you. It kind of puts you in the moment and goes, okay, this is who I am. No matter what happens in the popular sphere in the world, I can't move away from this. This is sort of my rock hard root. And I'll never be able to break with this, even if this thing fails. Emotionally, the scar will always be there. And so it's those kind of things. What I'm trying to say, and sort of sloppily, is what the right needs to do is it needs to figure out what the ground is and then start building there. And the ground is going to be the things that you love in a real sense, not the things that you think are powerful or that, communicate some kind of mythological notion of America. The things that actually are asking for your fundamental loyalty and have a draw on your fundamental loyalty. And of course, a lot of people have done this already. And then there's the next questions about what we do. But for like a complete noob, for someone who's just waking up from our Bugman existence and he's stopped watching The Daily Show, he doesn't believe the mainstream news anymore. The first, actually, that's a good example, right? The first thing you need to do is to make sure that you're on the road to not being a bug in your 40s. And maybe people who are not familiar with the Bugman trope, a Bugman is somebody who is totally disconnected from anything his ancestors experienced in the past and any desire to influence what his ancestors will experience in the future, beyond some vague technocratic notions like the amount of pleasure will increase or something ridiculous like that. He's just this atomized individual. The Bugman only has identities that pertain to consumer products. And the main thing he likes is having political opinions that make him feel smart, but that don't really actually give him an understanding of what will happen in the future or how good things could be procured in the future. The product is simply to feel smart. If you're a complete noob to these spheres, the goal is to escape from Planet Bugman and to try to form yourself into someone who's standing on firm ground. that could be a losing position. At this stage, most of these firm ground positions are not politically winning. But at least you're not some kind of ephemeral construction of the system. At least you're not an identity that's 100% owned by the Democratic Party and global woke capital.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably, if I were to have to muse on this topic, I'd probably give similar advice to people. And I think it's a hard thing to jump into, because it requires action in the real world. It's really fun to LARP, especially in politics, and to kind of consume the politics that, even in the right sphere, there's a lot of consumption of politics happening. Obviously, I think it's more, interesting, it's more philosophically infused, or it's greater because I'm in it. But there's also the fact that it's all ethereal, and it's all signaling, and it's all very much about positioning yourself as someone who is smart, or has whatever types of qualities you want to signal to your audience, screaming into the void,
and the parasocial relationships that come along with that. I don't know. I have one goal for 2021, and that is to be as little like the streamers like Vosh and Xander Hall and Demon Mama and even Destiny, as little like them as I humanly can be. And I know Destiny has his moments of clarity every now and again, but I'm so disgusted with how that format has twisted our dialectics on YouTube. It's basically taken us back. It's basically just completely destroyed any kind of notion that we're in it for truth, or we're in it for understanding things. And it basically has cordoned that off and made it a game of, is my guy winning? Is my guy losing? Let's go support my team, rah, rah. And it's just really disgusting. And the most ridiculous ideas, here's a classic ridiculous idea. It used to be hard, but I think this is sort of a quintessential ridiculous idea. Late transitioning men competing in women's sports. This idea will get, people will say that it's a scientific fact that late transitioning trans men have no advantage in women's sports. And it'll get support for this on a stream, even inside the highly progressive academy, no one defends that position whatsoever.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I don't really engage that much with this side of the internet. I watch a few streams, but never any leftist streams, I have to admit. I probably should, just to know thy enemy. But what about it is so corrosive? Is the monetization aspect, the super chats, the incentive systems that this opens up?
Yeah, I did a video in 2018 about Andy Worski and JF, John Francois Gariepi, where I was highly critical of the super chat system. And I said that they're essentially paid to be edgy, and this is destroying the right. Well, within 3 months of that video being created, the entire right-wing internet Bloodsports scene was completely destroyed. And what replaced it was the left-wing internet Bloodsports, which they don't call internet Bloodsports, they call streamers. But it's the same formula. It's the same edginess for profit. It's the same super chat me and you're part of the team. It's the same sort of performative conversation with no point and no direction towards anything that's more meaningful. I don't know. I guess I always assumed people would get tired of this. I guess they don't. I guess this is sort of what democracy looks like, in the same way that Twitter is what democracy looks like when you remove all the safety features and just let it roll down the hill. This is going nowhere good. This is every part of the human person that I hate is augmented. The egotism, the paranoia, the braggadocio, strangely enough, coming from people that would otherwise be effeminate. And it's like the worst elements of masculinity and the worst elements of femininity rolled up into one parasocial bubble and just picking up steam as it picks up clout. People get popular for being popular and more popular, and no understanding of anything is really obtained.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, the final phase of, the friend enemy reality. It's like internet politics is just, tribal conflict by other means. People really just love to see it. Like you said, it's a blood sport, and being, especially after this year, just being cooped up indoors, people have really hunkered down with their particular fighter, and it's also, I think it's how all of this, how the internet is monetized. All incentives point towards rage bait and, like you said, edginess, and it's people want to consume, and they want to consume tribal, visceral, foaming at the mouth type battles between Vosh and whoever, and everyone thinks the other person's a complete idiot. I really wonder what would take, what the wrench would be that we could throw into the system to kind of soften the worst excesses of the system. But the problem that I see is that this system is an outgrowth of this type of limbic capitalism. It really does play to the lower parts of humanity, and it really, like, these algorithms don't even need to know anything about you to milk your brain chemicals in such a way that you dish out either attention or money or both. So it's with every iteration it kind of extracts a little bit more of your soul, and it's I don't know, it's quite a scary space, because it is mindless. It's not like, oh, the AI has superhuman intelligence and it's thinks like a human. It doesn't need to think like a human. It thinks like an algorithm, and it doesn't need to understand you to game you. It's I don't know, it's scary.
In the words of Jonathan Haidt, the human mind is a gigantic elephant being driven by a very small elephant rider. And the elephant rider is our rational, conscious brains. And the YouTube algorithm is talking only to the elephant. It's only leading around the elephant. And if the elephant moves somewhere, the rider really doesn't have a choice. In essence, our brain is being hacked. And I don't know, I just... I want to not be part of it, because it's not that Vosh really, like, I don't care that Vosh exists, but the sort of body horror reason why I find this person so off-putting is because when I see him and people like him, I'm worried that I am just a slightly less degenerate version of him, and that just terrifies me. I disabled super chats on my channel for no other reason than to be less like Vosh. It's sort of ridiculous. Not that I was making a ton of money, but it helps certainly. I just don't want to do this stuff anymore, period. And I know maybe that's going to make me less popular. That's perfectly fine for me. I'm popular enough. Not that I'm anything hold a candle to someone like Vosh even for a second. But I just don't want to do this. It's not, this sort of competition for clout is just not where I want to be. And I don't think anyone on the distant side should want to be this. You might have to use this engine at some level, but there has to be a plan to move forward where we don't have to use that engine anymore.
Yeah. It's, everyone participating in the liberal system is a liberal, and in a way, I echo your sentiment about just being a less efficient version, a less efficient machine than someone like like one of these top guys, who's has a well-oiled communications machine, and they know how to play the algorithm, and they know how to the algorithm helps them, and it's it really does kind of like, it's a conflict that I have as well, because in a way I am really, really interested in these spaces. At the same time, I do monetize my stuff. I get money out of this. Not very much, but still, it's quite, it's great that I can do that. But there is, that compromise. People expect stuff. I get like every day I get messages of people like telling me that unsubscribe because you haven't addressed this. You didn't push back enough. How could you platform this person and stuff like that? So I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just it's a weird place to be in. It's I don't know. I'm still kind of adapting to it. I really like to do it. It's really fun to have these conversations, and I learned so much from them. But at the same time, yeah, it is kind of corrupting. It's I'm an e-girl, which is, I don't know, is that a good thing? Inevitably one is if you're a woman on the internet. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm a streamer, despite myself, right? I do streams. Like, so I am in some sense everything that I hate most about these people. But I think that this is sort of a fundamental lesson of classical morality, is that everything that we want in a prominent sense is corrupted. So we either have to be very, very prudent or very, very humble. And I don't know, I think with enough prudence and humility, there is a way through this jungle, but it's so treacherous.
Yeah. Yeah. My personal comfort is that, I feel that, I represent a certain perspective that, I don't think there are many women saying or being interested in this stuff and kind of opening at least this little corner of the Overton window, like trying to pry it open a little bit more. The thing is, I can't vouch for what's going to happen next. It's, red pilling a few more people. I think that's a useful public service. But at the same time, it's not like, I'm saving orphans from whatever, but I don't know. I feel like there's just something to it. It can be useful to some people. And again, lots of times, it is useful to them, but
I think it's very useful. I have no intention of shutting down my YouTube channel. I mean, I think that, well, first of all, I think it would be dishonest because I kind of, even if I do go back on something that I said, I kind of want it to be out there, like me saying that I'm a committed liberal in 2016. I kind of want it to be out there as a mistake and a conversation piece. And I do think it helps people a little bit, but I'm just saying that we haven't really found dry ground yet. We're missing something, and I'm not exactly so sure what that is, but yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, kind of an Eastern mysticism, you can't really get to enlightenment if you're kind of in the midst of it. Yeah, it's a it's a weird one. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is you've had quite a lot of debates about the sexual revolution, and I've written about this as well. What from your perspective is what was the name?
Like an hour?
Yeah, we can just pick up there.
Okay.
And I'll paste it.
Yeah, I have probably an hour more. So.
Okay, perfect. I'll probably go for maybe another half hour, and then I'll let you get on with your evening.
Okay, sure thing. Oh well, it's morning here.
Oh yeah, is it morning? Oh shit, it's evening here.
Yeah, I'm in California.
Oh, nice. Well, I mean, nice. Yeah. I don't know. It depends.
I'm actually leaving California, so strangely enough.
Really? Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to New Jersey for a job.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's probably more chill. I have a friend in New Jersey, and it seems to be quite a calm place to be at the moment. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I'm just kind of trying to get the highly coveted FU money, so to speak. Do people use that expression are you in Romania?
Yeah, I'm in Romania, but they don't use FU money here, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, the concept must exist at some level, right?
Yeah, of course. Less so because we've had, lots of communism, and you could have FU money, but you didn't have FU opportunities for consumption for a very long time. So
is it like party membership or something like that? That's kind of like FU money, right?
Yeah. As long as you're in the good graces of the party, it's not. You could say FU to most people except for the people who are above you in the party.
Well, I think we're rapidly entering that kind of dynamic in the West. So I'm just hoping for a quick cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, what are you thinking about this whole idea of exit, of people trying to distance themselves as much as possible, go into a kind of a more decentralized direction, both in terms of where they live and how they make money, and maybe using the internet for good rather than for of shredding your brain cells.
Well, that's the thing is I am a parallelist. I think that pacifist parallelist. I'm basically in the non-accelerationist and also non-populist side of the dissident right. So parallelism is what we have left. But I think the difficulty is that I really get irritated by these people who just say, just go live in the woods, live off the land. You need to do it, Dave. And I'm looking at my family finances, with a young family, and I'm thinking, well, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, do you know how difficult this would be? I mean, you still have to pay taxes, and the government's not going to forget that, right? And you can get cheap real estate in the middle of nowhere, but you're not going to have an income, and your job is going to be to maintain the property, and your family still needs to eat and be educated. I don't know what people are thinking. I think that this is more or less just a LARP for a lot of people. They want you to go sort of the Varg Vikernes routes because it's entertaining for them to see you do that, right? But they have no intention of doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that the only way to go forward is sort of the way you lose weight by replacing the really bad stuff to basically make a change of lifestyles that's sustainable. A lot of people who try to lose weight, they just do like these massive fasts for 48 or maybe even 2 weeks or something like that. And they lose a lot of weight and then they stop it and then they gain all the weight back again. The way that people keep weight off is by developing habits that are sustainable. And that's what I am really interested in. It's not this sort of radical LARP that almost very few people can do, if for no other reason, for financial reasons. And then to come up with just lifestyle changes that I can implement and I can feel comfortable telling people that they should implement. Maybe that's getting off of Twitter. And I don't know. This has been great for me. I don't know if it's a solution for everyone, but it's certainly sustainable for me. And there has to be a productive way of using the internet, because there's just no alternative to using the internet. But we can't just go live in the woods. That's not a realistic solution.
Yeah, and it's also kind of it's just a knee-jerk reaction to whatever derangements we're facing, because it is yes, all of these tools are deranging, they're alienating, they steal from us, but at the same time, living in the woods, like if I ask my grandpa, he's deceased now, but he essentially came from a world before our time. He got shoes, I think, when he was, 12 or something. He was just running around in like leather socks throughout a disease-ridden farm his whole youth, and he had to take care of his smaller siblings, and it was like you can imagine Moldova in the 1930s, like it was kind of a shitty thing. And if you'd ask him like what's your position on living with central heating and all the like amenities of modernity, he'd just laugh and say this is paradise, because he knew the contrast. And but I think there are ways to I think I've had another guy on the podcast, Joe Norman, and he calls it cosmopolitan localism, where you kind of try to move away from the center. He's also a homesteader, so he also has like a land and all that. And I know that's not necessarily attainable for everyone, but yeah, I think it's an interesting goal to have, because when you have land and when you work with your hands and kind of are forced by your circumstances to make use of your surroundings and kind of live in congruence of nature, it does kind of pull you back into reality. It's like you can't just be sitting on Twitter all day, because there's shit to do. The chickens need to be fed.
Yeah,
you need to do stuff. But there's also he's also like a complexity scientist. He works from his computer. He has courses and he works on papers and stuff like that. So I think that lifestyle is is really good, and if you can have it, you should go that direction. But it really isn't attainable for most people. Like, it's not the kind of job that most people would be able to get.
Yeah, that's a lot of these things, like be a landowner or be a farmer, that's just so out of reach of your average dissident that it feels very LARPy to me. It took me a very long time and a lot of education to even get the small amount of independence I have right now. And I can't imagine how hard it would be for someone with significantly less means. So, I mean, we need to focus on the small little things we can do to not just get sucked into the abyss of modernity. And I don't know. I think we need to develop boundaries to a certain extent. I think the biggest problem, the biggest missing components, is how we're actually going to form communities. This is a very difficult thing to do in modernity. People move around all the time for work. It's a gig economy. But people need it now more than ever, especially if we want to resist living like we did in 2020.
Yeah, and it's like you said, there's a stratification that a lot of people that are in our circles, kind of like, intellectuals on the internet discussing ideas and stuff like that. This is kind of a bit of a LARP in itself, and it's also quite separate from the mainstream of people. Like even in 2020, like for people like me, I had Bugman life, living in the pod, kind of, but it was because I could afford it. Like I could really actually pay people who were out there in the wilderness to bring me stuff because it's okay, I can do that because I make enough money. But it's the divide between I think online LARPing and the real world is still quite real for a lot of people, and it's hard to I mean, now we're talking about what people like us, very particular type of people, can do, but most people really can't do this stuff, and they've been hardest hit by this. So this kind of leads me to another question I want to ask you about populism, because I know you've had kind of some discussions about.
I'm trying to kind of definitively bottom out on this conversation. This is the big one I'm trying to bottom out on. But yeah, go for it. I think this is still a hot discussion inside right-wing circles.
Yeah, I mean, with Trump, essentially, the shining star on the right-wing horizon was the idea that, okay, populism, this is it, the people, in a way, almost kind of like the flip side of a Marxist revolution. We saw people were taking back the popular virtues and kind of flipping the script from the bottom up. Didn't really pan out as well as people expected. I mean, it didn't really end up victorious in the long run, and by the long run I mean after one term of Trump. But I'm curious what your view is on this. Like, is there a future for populism?
I just don't see it. I mean, this is the thing I'm the most negative on is populism. Not that I don't really appreciate folk culture and the common man. I do. But every time I see this populism, I see this falsehood, this pervasive phoniness that's just in every aspect of what it sort of touches. And I don't know. I mean, it's I just don't see what's gained by something like Trump. We had 4 years of overconfidence followed by essentially a retrenchment of the establishment that was worse than when we had started the process. I guess, you could say it accelerated things, but that's not, for me, populism can't claim accelerationism as a victory. The idea of populism is that the popular pushback is actually going to be a real pushback and not something that accelerates its opposite or that forces conservatives or right-wingers or post-liberals to go in a different direction. I just don't see what's gained by populism. The world is ruled by elites or shadow elites. And the popular the popular dissidents, the peasants, their real power comes with an alliance with some elite force. Currently, in America at least, there is no real elite opposition to the mainstream, as far as I can figure out. There are people who make noises in that direction, but there is no elite coalition that really wants to go in a different direction. And until there is, I'm not so sure what I'm not so sure what can be accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the hope of some people, kind of on the popular end of things, is that you can kind of build, you can incubate an elite, you can kind of bring up people to the rank of elites. Not sure I buy this myself, but I do see some figures coming up, but don't think they're populist though. I think I would rather say that they're coming out of Silicon Valley and they're representing some of these ideas, which is definitely not very populist. I mean, it's a different type of elite. It's more more autistic, but it's still very much kind of Ivy adjacent.
When you say elevate people to elites, I guess I'd pause there and say yes and no, because if you have a population, I mean, an elite does need a population to support it, right? And if that population is very elevated and very sure of itself and highly educated and has virtues, it's a lot easier to see how that population will generate an elite, or how that population could be a great ally to some kind of dissident elite in the future. There is every benefit to be had for the elevation of people through education. I don't think there is any benefit to some kind of lowest common denominator game where, we're the real Democrats. Oh, well, this is what Americans really think. Any kind of grassroots showing up to the polls to overwhelm what the mainstream wants. I don't know. I that's not true now in America, and I question whether it was ever true in the past.
Yeah. It's like I feel like a lot of people were red pilled with many of the events of the last year, including the so-called insurrection and a lot of these kind of grassroots type movements that were just wiped out with massive force and narrativized instantly.
January 6th is the best example of it. I mean, you're going to see, it's so funny. January 6th is like a dissected frog of how this works, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? The Capitol riots.
The insurrection.
The insurrections. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's so obvious, and it's so like what you have is you have a protest that it was much less violent than the George Floyd protests of 8 months earlier. They storm a public building, sometimes through breaking windows, sometimes apparently because it appears that police officers told them that, this was something that, that would be tolerated. Violence happens almost entirely from the government side. I haven't heard of any fatalities going in the opposite direction. And then what happens is they get called insurrectionists. The New York Times cooks up a phony baloney story from an anonymous source about protesters beating a cop to death with a fire extinguisher. That phony baloney story gets repeated by every other mainstream outlet till it becomes establishment truth, and you get banned for denying it. And then 3 months later, the truth comes out. You see what actually happened. And nevertheless, this gets narrativized into the worst thing that's ever happened, to the extent that sitting Congress people like AOC still claim to be traumatized by an experience of something that really never happened.
Yeah, and I think she wasn't even in the building.
She was nowhere near it, and she's experiencing post-traumatic stress symptoms from basically what is a narrative that only happened in the imagination of the New York Times.
Yeah, I think that the AOC post-traumatic stress thing is another thing I'd like to kind of look at with you. It's like this turning of inner emotions into political cudgels. The idea that, you can have these, narcissistic outbreaks on television, and that, it's not something that's going to discredit you, but it's actually going to help you. It's going to, I don't know, give your assertion some power behind them. Like you're really crying about this, so it must be true. This to me feels like how can you even have politics when this is the level at which things are discussed?
Well, in the Aristotelian sense, this is politics, right? This is the demotic form of politics at its apex. AOC is a completely contrived figure. Everything is for the cameras. Everything is fake emotion. Nothing is prudent policy. Another you could have equally mentioned is her foray into Twitch streaming, like getting in with the young people and playing playing Among Us with leftist Twitch streamers for an hour, and this is just played up as being, oh my God, she's so down to earth. I don't know what to say, and this is just the dumbest thing imaginable. And it's not like I don't want. It's not like I'm jealous. It's not like I want a right-wing AOC. I'm just horrified with this concept at large. I mean, this person is in power, and it seems like what they're most interested in doing is sort of crafting a populist profile where they appeal to the lowest common denominator after they've gotten elected. There's no thought towards governing whatsoever. Anything that comes after this has to be against this, either in a right-wing or a left-wing form. And that's why I can never really get behind Trump, because he was sort of a cartoon character. And that's fine. I think many people voted for Trump more or less ironically. And as an ironic choice, that then Trump is he's kind of funny, and maybe there could be some change in that direction just through the sheer ridiculousness of his existence. But with AOC, you see like the completely unironic post-modern candidate. And to me, it's just horrifying. I have no desire to participate in this whatsoever, other than to mock it. But even then, what am I mocking? Because this thing rules me, right? If I mock it, I'm just kind of mocking myself. The joke's on me, ultimately, because this is the aristocrat that rules my life.
Yeah, and the painful thing is that people have come to expect this. This is like you said, if you bring one of the founding fathers back into 2021 and showed them the spectacle of politics now, they'd probably have something to say about it. But at the same time, our perspective on history is also very much filtered by whoever was there to chronicle it and offer their perspective. So I'm sure there was some emotional layers to politics back then as well. But like Sam Adams, right? Sam Adams was just a complete loud. He was just a complete. His father, he famously had was a brewer, right? And this guy was just beating people up in the streets with his little flash mob called the Sons of Liberty. The demonic instinct has always existed, but it's just never been so enthroned as it has been now. Yeah, and I think at least under a different regime, you'd have the instinct that there's something wrong with this, rather than the idea that this is a legitimate expression of I don't know, of whatever it is, of emotion or of care, of empathy. Because that's kind of these are the words that you keep hearing. That the left is empathetic.
Do people still say that anymore? I'm honestly, right? I wonder, right? Because tolerance and empathy were sort of the compliments they paid themselves in 2008 when I sort of began. I mean, 2008 probably was the height of my own progressivism. And that's when I began the journey back towards the uber reactionary I am right now. And the words that the left reserved themselves for tolerance and empathy, that doesn't fit anymore. That doesn't seem to be I don't recognize that in the left at all.
Yeah, I think even now, whenever I hear that, it's just leftists patting themselves on the back or just saying that, the right, what they're missing is empathy. If the Republicans would just have more empathy, they'd see the light. I think it's, just a way of explaining their worldview to people and kind of like you said, retconning it and saying, okay, whatever I am feeling at the moment, it must be empathy because I'm a good person. And whatever you want is probably the opposite of empathy because you're a bad person. It's just a friend enemy type situation.
I mean, this is so crude. You have to imagine that can't be sustainable. I suppose that this is just sort of, we're going to have to put our faith in sort of political gravity at this stage, right? There was this line from Apollo 13, that movie from the 90s. Probably no one remembers it, but there's at this one point where they just turn the engines off and they're saying, okay, well, we just put Isaac Newton in the driver's seat. Let's hope the gravity well does what it does and slingshots us back to Earth. And, we're kind of in a scary situation. We have to imagine that since at all points in time, previously when people have given in to their ultimate demotic instincts, it's come back to bite them. We have to imagine that there's going to be some sort of political gravity that ends this from some direction at some stage. And a clearer dialectic can emerge on the other side of it. Yeah. But, there's all these different factors. There's all these different technologies like social media that are here that weren't there in the past. So, exactly. I feel like there's no way that, political gravity can be suspended indefinitely, but we have no idea when this is going to actually come into effect due to how humans communicate has been totally redesigned. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think it's on the one hand, I feel like the internet is jet fuel for social change because it does kind of push things to happen fairly fast. You get to these cascade effects quite fast in one direction or the other. But at the same time, it's kind of eroded the human capital, that could actually be, like the men with empty chests. Who would stand up? What is there to protect? These are all like questions. That's kind of why I'm so interested in kind of this post-liberal moment, because that's why a lot of people are here, because they're like, okay, the human itself has been denatured. There's nothing to live for. That's the thing. Like, and even if information travels at the speed of light, and everyone's red pilled tomorrow, what are they going to do?
Nothing at this stage, right? And this is something that this thing that's sort of odd to me. I don't know, you're probably a lot younger than I am, but I'm going to ask you if you've seen this phenomenon.
I'm 32, so I don't know. Probably
okay, so
not.
Maybe we're roughly the same age, right? This is something that I've kind of realized, and I intend to write an essay on this at some stage. But do you notice that sort of like the idea of coolness has kind of evaporated? When I was in the 90s, I thought being popular and being cool were the same thing. And now, to me right now, it's really cool. It's really apparent that they're different things and that people only care about being popular and they don't care at all about being cool. At least in the way that we usually thought cool worked. It's sort of strange, right?
Yeah. I think I know what you're coming at. But yeah, I think there's definitely a drifting apart of the two concepts, and I don't know if what will be cool nowadays. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, Vosh is popular, but Vosh is the exact opposite of someone who I would think is cool, right? Just in the same way that you could see a character like, I don't know, The Big Lebowski might be a bad example, but a lot of these images in the 90s of like the independent guy who's like doesn't have very much money, but at the same time he's got kind of like this attitude that makes him cool. But like, he's in control of things. He's in control of his little space, even though he's not popular, he's not rich, he's not whatever. I don't know. It's this weird dynamic where I feel that people aren't focused on finding the aristocratic personalities. They're focused on finding the popular personalities. And I think that maybe there'll be a return to finding the aristocratic personalities at some stage. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it might also have something to do with just the fracturing of kind of hyper reality. Because in a way, you can you chase clout in these subgroups, and you don't really have like the centralized concept of cool anymore. I mean, if you're a furry or whatever like internet subcategory, I'm sure there is a way to be cool, or maybe something like it within your own subgenre of whatever, and then maybe people just kind of like to chase that. But yeah, it's not really cool, because essentially cool was that, like you said, that aristocratic personality of kind of detachment from outcome in a way, just like
what the Greeks called apathetica, right? I think that's a good equivalent for the modern age. But detachment from things that don't matter, right? This sort of the Tyler Durden, right? To let which does not matter slide away because it doesn't really affect you.
Yeah, it might also have something to do with the fact that people, by being super plugged in to hyper reality, you're almost never exempt from that anxiety that the internet gives you, which is completely the counter to any apathetica or any detachment from it. You're plugged in essentially. You can't be detached. You can't be plugged out.
I hate to constantly bring up the streamers, but the sort of moniker that people like Bosch and the other streamers really hate. At one point, he said "submit to the mob" when he was talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. Like Kyle Rittenhouse should have submitted his own life to the mob once they attacked him, rather than firing back at them. But when you think about it, submit to the mob is what hyper reality constantly tells us. Every time we obsessively check the number of people who are following us or subscribe to us or are watching, every time we submit to search engine optimization, we are essentially saying that dumber people should have a purchase on what we say or believe. I can't express how little I think of that, right? I don't want to pander. And I think that that's going to have to be a premium at some stage, just saying what you think. The reason why I'm here is so I can say what I think, not so I can get clout by telling people what they already want to hear.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. It's there is this, being in the eye of whoever wants to watch is kind of, I don't know, it is corrupting, and I think there is virtue in resisting it, but how much are you resisting it? I don't know. That's kind of all my question all the time, because I'm like, okay, I feel like I am genuinely myself, but I'm sure I am warped in many ways by being exposed to so many people. Like, I don't know, a stadium full of people listens to my whatever brain farts every day, which is just absolutely nuts. And I'm sure that changes me. And I know I've changed, because after a while, after a certain size of audience, people, you're less of a shitposter, you're more of a target. People want to tear you down, so you don't want to really go balls to the wall with some things, because it's going to be a shitstorm. But I don't know. It's a very weird space to be in, and yeah, it's hard to navigate.
Yeah, I guess I just have to kind of rely on the instinct that this motion is coming to a head, or will come to the head in very short order for our civilization, just because I don't think it can continuously get more and more demonic, I'm saying demotic, not demonic. I believe that's the correct word. Basically, crudely populist is what I mean.
Yeah, but even if people mishear you, it's probably not too bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's sort of, I think they're in a Carlylean sense, they are linked at the hip, right?
Yeah, it's Yeah, I think it's an interesting time to be alive, and I think it's an interesting time to be on the internet. And I'll keep being here in one way or another, and I know you will too, even if you're
Yeah.
not necessarily, bathing in the mainstream of brain disaster that is Twitter.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you the question of the show, which is,
Yes.
do you have a subversive thinker, writer? Could be, dead or alive, that you think deserves a bit more interest, there's a bit more readership, a bit more clout?
Oh, good Lord, that's tough. If I knew you were going to say that, I would have thought about it a little bit more. I'm going to be doing a video where I'm packing up to do a long move. So I promised my fans I'd do a video where I just talk about every single book on my bookshelf. Mm-hmm. On my bookshelf right now, there's Boethius, and there is Boethius wrote Consolation of Philosophy. He's one of the few people that wrote in the Dark Age, which I think is like, that's a hard read. I don't think it's very relevant for our time. In some sense, it's hyper relevant because it's very much an image from a declining civilization and a consolation, a discussion of what it means to sort of go down with your principles intact. There's Julius Evola's Ride the Tiger. I'm not a big Evola fan at all, but I'm finding a lot more to like about in that book than his revolt against the modern world. I find him to be a little bit pagan for my taste, and but I think it's still worthwhile. I don't know, to be quite honest. I really would urge people. As opposed to all of these thinkers, I could list Carlyle, I could list, de Maistre, who's always one of my favorites and all this stuff. I don't really like Carlyle, even though I recognize him as essential. I could list Burnham, but that's actually not what I want to tell people. If I were to communicate, aside from coming up with my favorite reactionary author, my favorite non-progressive author from the last 300 or perhaps even the last 3,000 years, I would tell people that they should spend more time reading fiction and fiction that they genuinely enjoy, even if it's pulp fiction, even if it's something that's stupid. I think if you engage with a fictional character and they seem like they come from a fresher time, they seem like they're having more human experiences than you're capable of experiencing in your life right now, even if it's like the stupidest fiction imaginable, that's worthwhile because it has you kind of going to the source. The source of all of our politics is this desire to be more human. And reading a tactics manual for how to procure that, we kind of get into this overly abstracted egghead version of all of this. Reading a fictional work like Conan the Barbarian or Solomon Kane or something that's utterly stupid like that, at least for men, and I'm sure there's female equivalents, at least for men, it kind of like links you back with this primal desire to be in the moment, to be part of this conflict or part of this reality that seems imminent in a way that nothing in 2020 seemed imminent. In 2020, everything we experienced was hidden behind a screen with 35 layers of meta commentary attached to it. If you go to a fictional work and you really allow yourself to enjoy it, or if you go outside and read it, that's actually the ultimate experience, is to just go outside and read the stupidest fiction book imaginable that you really enjoy. You're kind of experiencing a story, a human saga, in a way that's more real than anything was real in 2020. And if that's not the starting point for some kind of post-liberal or postmodern or post-left view of the world, then I don't have a better solution for you. I think it really has to start with a desire for something that's more wholesome and then move forward with theorizing. We can't be scientists lecturing birds on how to fly. We have to have a desire to fly and an experience of the real world first.
Yeah. That's very, very beautifully put, and I completely agree with that. Like I was looking at my Kindle recently, and it's chock full of, just pure political theory, all of it. I have a few like baby books in there, but it's just like, it's like I exhaust myself just thinking about it. But it is really interesting. But at the same time, like you say, it does kind of warp you. It kind of puts you in this detective mindset that if you could just figure out what exactly it is that is, leading to this to this point, then you could just tell people, and somehow the Gordian knot would just explode, and everyone would be happy, and heaven would descend on earth. But actually,
it reminds you, how did they solve the Gordian knot, right?
Yeah.
They didn't solve it by figuring it out, right? They solved it because some barbaric Macedonian, is that where Mania is? Somewhere near there, right? Some barbaric Macedonian just came in with a battle axe and hacked the damn thing in two, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, you need to log off, touch grass, go outside.
Exactly. But I want to say, like, fiction rating and enjoyment is part of that, right? It's very much a part of that. Stories come before our political theory, and an intuitive consciousness of our own humanity predates a theoretical understanding of it, and the valuing of our own humanity really has to prefigure any kind of values that we take to a political sphere.
Yeah, and it's in a way, I mean, I'm gonna throw back to a person that's not necessarily very popular nowadays in the right wing, Jordan Peterson, but he did have something to say about, the things that are truer than true, and narrative in that way is kind of a meta truth, and I think that he was really on the money with that, because like you say, fictions might be a bit truer than your Burnham sometimes. Even though it's really fascinating, and I think people should read it, but still, I think that's
especially the fiction that still appeals after you've been red pilled.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, yeah.
I mean, go back and read the fiction and find what really seems true to you and still like pleasant to read. And I think you'll look at it with different eyes.
Yeah, I think people should read the classics probably. Just go maybe a bit deeper into history, because if you read stuff from 2020, you might be it might be a bit jarring.
Yeah, well, of course.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dave. This was a pleasure speaking to you after watching hours upon hours of your excellent videos in the last few years. So thank you so much for doing what you do, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, and thanks for having me.